Okay, so welcome to this evening's, it's afternoon, so afternoon session, where we are going to discuss finance and climate action in the agricultural sector. As we know, that has been a burning topic for years, and it is something that we want to flesh out a little bit this evening. So we have our distinguished panelists who will be giving us some food for thought as to how we could better improve finance in the agricultural sector. So we're already a little bit behind. So what I want to do is welcome our permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands, Forestry, Marine Resources, and Cooperatives, a long list of things, P.S. Isaac Bagwan, who will give us some welcome remarks this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Del Sol. For one moment, I was in the wrong room, and then I said, oh, we have a good crowded room. And then I was told that I have to be downstairs. So in terms of comparison, I think because the room is big, we're a bit unequal amongst. So let me, first of all, say a pleasant good afternoon to all gathered. It is my distinct pleasure to recognize those on the panel or esteemed members of the panel, people who I know very well and who I've worked with. So you're in for a treat, I could tell you this. I also want to take the opportunity to welcome our visitors. Of course, it goes without saying that visiting Grenada once is not enough. You got to come back for those who have not been here before. So it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you into this panel discussion. I want to begin by again thanking the panelists and for you to take the time to be here in this important conversation. We often speak in regional and global forums about climate financing, about the billions pledge and the commitment made. We hear that there is high liquidity in the sector. We hear about increasing focus on sustainability. But for our farmers across the region, the men and women who are in the forefront or the front line, the present climate crisis is somewhat a distance feeling for them. From a theoretical point of view, they understand, but from a practical point of view, they feel the impact. So for them, financing continues to be a difficult area to access, slow to arrive at, and often misaligned with the real needs. Despite being among the most climate vulnerable sector in our economies, many of our farmers are still struggling to secure the resources they need to adapt and to build resilience. They see the storms, they see the droughts, they see the change in seasons, but they don't always see the financial system that is in place and ready and willing to support them in the time that we need to respond to. This is something that we must change. If we are serious about climate action in agriculture, then it stands to reason that we must be just as serious about financing that action at the scale and at the speed that is required. And to do this, we must build capacity within the sector, among farmers, among cooperatives, among institutions to be able to access, absorb, and deploy climate financing effectively. Here at the Ministry of Agriculture in Grenada, we've been working to reduce this risk and to look at the avenues and the mechanisms that we have in place to assist us. We've implemented many programs to subsidize critical input and labor, and I must add that at this juncture, following Hurricane Beryl last year, the government of Grenada would have invested approximately $32.4 million into payment in terms of insurance to that sector. We have been able to also subsidize labor costs and to also provide some inputs. The issue is that we need to have innovative systems to be able to respond to farmers. The government, of course, would have invested in the CRIF insurance and the coast insurance as it relates to the fisher folks. And as part of my task in the ministry, in fact, we were distributing some of these resources. And based on the amount of resources or the payout that have been received, when we did the calculation, we found out that farmers would get an average of about $302 per payment. Of course, that is not even a drop, and it's very inadequate to address the concerns. So the government would have taken a policy decision to increase that amount. And again, my mind goes on to the fisher folks in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Many of them would have got damage in terms of the fishing vessels, but the reality is that the vast majority did not have insurance. And in fact, a conversation with one of the fisher folk was that you have an investment, which is a fishing boat, of approximately $80,000, yet he didn't see the need to take out insurance. And of course, the government have taken a policy decision to pay 50% of the cost, but yet the fisher folk would have gotten a help, but he's saying this is not enough. So how do we respond? What are the mechanisms that we need to put in place? So this is why today's discussion is timely and critical. We need to hear from the panelists, their own thoughts and some of the gaps that they have seen, and basically how we could be able to address these gaps and to be able to move forward. So as I've indicated at the beginning, we're very happy for this panel. We're very happy that you are here. And I'm sure the organizers would provide an opportunity so that we can question the panelists in terms of some of the things that you would recommend and some of the thoughts. So with these words, I want to say again, welcome and thank you for being here. Thank you much.
Thank you, P.S. Bagwan. Now, it's time for us to get in the meat of the matter, which is why you are here. So before we begin, let me briefly outline how this session will run. So we will start with a moderated discussion. Each of our distinguished panelists will respond to 2 structured or tailored questions related to their expertise and experience in financing climate action in general, but more specifically in the agricultural sector. Each response will be limited to 4 to 5 minutes. I know you have a lot to say, but we want to be tight and focused so that we could give you, our audience, as much time to interface and interact with them. So after we've heard from our panelists, we'll open the floor to them, where they'll give a brief 2-minute closing remarks, I would say, and then we'll open the floor to you, our distinguished guests, to ask whatever question or raise whatever comment that you would like to raise. So with that said, let me now move to introducing our distinguished panelists who are here with us today. I want to make sure I introduce the right panelists. So. Okay, so to my left, my immediate left, we have Senator Roderick Sinclair. Now, Senator Sinclair started off his career as a lab technician, followed by teaching agriculture at the CXC level. So he's been in this business for a while now. After that, he worked for over 2 decades in the agricultural business sector in Grenada, mainly in fresh produce marketing as a senior manager of the Marketing and National Importing Board, Grenada. And most recently, he has now become a little bit more spicy. He has moved to the spice sector, where he's the general manager of the Grenada Cooperative Nutmeg Association. As a media enthusiast, Roderick started a weekly column with the Grenadian Voice, where he delivered online content related to the agricultural sector. Senator Sinclair possesses a BSc in Total Quality Management and an MBA with a focus on international business, plus a diploma in enterprise development through value chain and business service marketing. A core approach with a focus on market development was his main thesis for that diploma. Roderick traveled throughout the Caribbean, Africa and Latin America, and China, and Singapore, attending workshops and international conferences on agriculture and agribusiness, from which he created a strong network with global actors and experts in the agricultural sector. In October 2020, Roderick received his instruments to represent the interests of farmers and fishers in the upper house of Parliament. In September 2022, he once again received instruments to represent the interests of farmers and fishers in the Senate. So, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Senator Roderick Sinclair. So, to Roderick's it's gonna get immediate left, we have Miss Marion Geis. I hope I pronounced the last name correctly. She is the head of projects with the GCRAF project. She works with the GIZ organization, a faithful partner over the years that has been supporting work in the agricultural sector. So let's welcome Ms. Marion Geis to our session. To Marion's left, we have Ms. Natasha Joseph. Natasha Joseph is the climate finance specialist at the Grenada Development Bank, where she plays a pivotal role in driving sustainable climate resilient development. With a background in accounting and finance, Natasha is passionate about leveraging financial instruments to address the pressing challenges of climate change. At the GDB, Grenada Development Bank, Natasha remains committed to improving climate resilience, developing innovative climate finance products, facilitating capacity building, and aligning the bank's lending portfolio with Grenada's commitments outlined in various policy documents, including the National Determined Contributions and National Adaptation Plan. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Natasha Joseph of the GDB. To Natasha's left, we have Mr. Martin Barito. Martin is the Commonwealth National Climate Finance Advisor for Grenada for the past 6 years. He has worked as a climate finance advisor to the government of Antigua and Barbuda and Tonga in the South Pacific. Mr. Barito, a national of Grenada, brings a wealth of knowledge with over 20 years of experience working throughout the Caribbean with governments and non-governmental organizations, including national organizations such as the United Nations Development Program, international organizations, sorry. He has a master's degree in participatory forestry, management, and agricultural extension from the University of Reading, United Kingdom, and over 10 years of experience working on the establishment and operationalization of environmental funds. In 2010, he established and directed a not-for-profit company called Sustainable Grenadines, Inc., or SUSGRENS. Martin has a wide range of expertise in climate change adaptation, climate finance, ecosystems-based adaptation, marine and coastal conservation management of non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and capacity development. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Martin Barito. To Martin's left, we have Mr. Steve Maxime, a guy I know very well. Let me just get Steve here. Steve, you seem to have been lost in the shuffle. So Steve Maximin was among the first agricultural scientists in 1998 addressing climate change through the CPAC, MACC, and ACCC projects, which were forerunners to the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center. With 11 years of agricultural development banking experience, he has worked as a consultant in every CARICOM country. He has written 2 successful multi-million-dollar GCF readiness grants and is an EU-recognized expert on climate change and agriculture, an advocate for just transition and climate finance in seeds agriculture. He is the trademark owner of the Climate Smart Agricultural Compliant Protocols, or CSAP, and the developer of the Climate Premium Financial Instruments. And financial instruments was among the first agricultural scientists in 1998 addressing climate change through the CPACC, MACC, and ACC projects. That was, I think, the person, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we had this thing twice, so please welcome Mr. Steve Maximin. Yeah. And last but not least, our final panelist, who is on Zoom, joining us virtually. We have Mr. Phoenix Belfield. Okay, so Phoenix Belfield is an economist, strategist, entrepreneur, fintech consultant, and credit union activist, recognized as one of the most prominent voices advocating for credit union growth and development, recognition, and financial inclusion. He is the general manager of the Dominica Cooperative Societies League Limited and the CEO and founder of MLaja Wallet, a financially inclusive mobile wallet platform aimed at future-proofing the credit union movement by providing cutting-edge digital technology solutions for the movement and its members. He also co-developed the Flexible Hurricane Protection Initiative with CREED, designed to enhance the resilience of local communities in the aftermath of tropical cyclones. Phoenix is the host of the most popular weekly radio and social media program, The Cooperative Voice. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Felix Belfield. So now that we have given you an overview of the wide and vast experience of our panelists, we moved into the structured part of this afternoon, session. So I will move with the questions as I did with the introduction of the panelists. From my left, go all the way down. So my first question is to Mr. Roderick Sinclair. Now, Mr. Sinclair, climate change is reshaping the future of agriculture in Grenada and in the Caribbean as a whole. As we look to build resilience, the policy and legislative agenda or environment must be part of the solution. From your point of view as the Senator for Agriculture and Fisheries, given the increasing urgency for climate resilience in the Caribbean, how does Grenada need to position or strengthen its agricultural policies to support widespread adaptation of climate resilient technologies, particularly among smallholder farmers and agricultural entrepreneurs who face the greatest barrier to investment?
Thank you, Gregory, and thank you to the organizers for having approached me to be here. I want to say good afternoon also to the distinguished panel, my good friend Martin from school days. Good to be here, very good. and of course, the audience here and those on the outside. It's a very difficult question. You're asking me, Gregory, because I think about it last night deeply, and I speak about legislation. Nobody likes legislation. But of course, I will start off by responding to you in a couple of ways. One, what are we trying to achieve? I think that's the question. And what are the real challenge in achieving what we want to achieve? What we want to achieve is that our farmers, our fishers, our agro-processors, and all the others acting in the value chain, because we cannot just be wanting to have climate smart technologies only at the farm level, at the digging of the soil level, at the churning of the gospo or the orange, but along the chain. And so if you look at what has been happening in Grenada and around the world, there is a push about e-vehicles and e-transport and hybrids and solar energy and renewable energies. But there are a lot of other parts that are missing. We speak about solar pumps and all of those things. But we have to look at a lot of other areas. And I think these are the concerns. So, for example, our farmers, fishers, as the case may be, need monies to, for example, have different type of irrigation techniques, different type of greenhouse technologies, different type of equipment, cold storage. I'm saying all of these things, even packaging, you know, because what is that climate issue that you want to address that would be able to add more value for you, and also that would be able to resolve your product and present it in a better quality. And I'm saying this to say that at the legislative level, these things has to be clear and such that you can able to establish laws and regulation, incentives and otherwise, that would better able to facilitate that transition. So for example, you may have a law, what I will call an incentive catering for not just about rebates and about discounts. It's more than that. It's about access. You know, how do you access? So for example, how does the bank, how does the credit union, for example, have a suite of products that would enable a farmer, a fisher, agro-processor to go and get financing for that. For example, you look at the financial institutions. They have, it's not regulated, but they have advertisement to build a house, to buy a car, to buy a house, to buy, to go on a holiday, all of those things. But where is that financing incentive for you to involve in those climate smart activities? For example, the type of seeds you buy and so on. And I say this to say that this is important because the operators in the value chain, whether it's the seed providers, the equipment providers, the supermarkets, that would be the hotels, whoever are participating, they need to now see what does it mean for us. And in that regards, they also need to be incentivized. So if they are going to be buying those sort of products from persons who involve in climate smart technologies, what is the end game? Would the product be the same as the person not involved in climate smart activities? And that's where the issue of, for example, some of the points you make about Steve. Is there a national certification? Where is the role of the Bureau of Standards so you can certify that this farmer has done maybe 90% or 80% of climate smart activities such that his product at the end of the day, our product, has a different value because they are contributing to a common good? Is there a trademark or some special mark that could be associated with it? I'm saying this to say that once we understand those things, then you can be able to provide the finances. So for example, a supermarket may say, look, farmer, we can pay you a 10 cents premium or 5 cents premium. And those sort of monies would better able to now pay Natasha when she give a loan in GDB, because she's concerned where she's getting the money from. And so the whole issue of education of the farmer, of the agro-processor, the entrepreneur, to understand the role that this change will make to their life and to the end game would give them the impetus to do it. Otherwise, why do it? So education is a key thing. And then we need to also ensure, Gregory, that the whole system, other persons, because you may realize that the efforts that a farmer might make in all of this goodness that we want to create might end up at the end of the day at a negative when you do the whole net contribution by others and the farmer in the value chain. So that person, so there should be I don't want to call that a supply chain, but no, all that persons that belong to that chain can be certified, just like how you do organics, etc. And then you can legislate this type of things and have incentives and programs around that. That's what it would be my initial response to you on that.
Okay, you went just a little bit over the time I allocated for you, but I still want to ask you a quick question. What should come first, though? All of these things or the legislation that will drive those things?
No, well, I will tell you, legislation don't just come so unless you live in a revolution. Legislation has to be of the people, for the people, to the benefit of a system. And so if you realize right now, in particular, having been in the Senate, there are a lot of times there, for example, the geographic indication regulation, Mr. Branch will tell you, look, oh, St. Clair, we have this thing hold up because we have to make sure that there's a policy document. But this policy document is driven by consultation with the stakeholders. And so the fact that you're raising this is very significant. So our farmers, our fishers, all the persons involved need to have this caucus and discussion. And so the question I said originally, is there a need? Because if there is not a need, then it's an issue. But nationally and worldwide, there is a need. We have to approach those areas because we have risk, you know, the climate issues. So yes, so that now will drive the next step. And that is where you get the farmers, you get all the participation in the value chain and say, what will work for you? What will make it good for you to come on board? Everybody wouldn't come on board in the beginning. And you incentivize that across the chain. But the consumers at the end of the day must be willing to pay, because there will be some cost. Does it have to be more? At the end of the day, we say in the long run, it's going to cost us cheaper. Okay. In the long run, it's going to cost you cheaper, but initially, you have to pay. And so where does the banks, the interest rates, and so on, especially catered for those things? So I think that conversation needs to happen, and I think something that should happen beyond this discussion here, because we're not here for just talk. We're here to create end result.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Before I go to your second question, I'd like to ask the guys controlling the Zoom if they could mute some of the participants, because our panelists online is indicating that there's a lot of chatter going on there. So, yeah, thanks. Okay, so Mr. Sinclair, we have heard, over and over, that the sticking point for agricultural development is this issue of access to finance. So recognizing the traditional challenges in attracting finance to the sector, let me just divert a little bit quickly. We have a lot of things that we are trying to do as a nation, as a region. We're talking about 25 by 25, which is now moved to 25 by 35. All of these things are going to require real investment into the agricultural sector for them to be achieved. So from your point of view, what role do you see you as parliamentarians, policymakers, in reshaping the narrative around agriculture as a viable, investable sector? And how can public institutions like yours work more effectively with financial actors in the banks, credit unions, etc., to the risk investments in that agricultural sector? How do we make that financing more palatable for that sector?
I think we have to pass, we must pass some laws and regulation, because if you don't do it, yes, you consult, you not just push it, but you consult in such a manner that you can come up with an incentives package. Like in the US, you have the Farm Bill, which focuses on different areas. We look at that, involving the financial sector, but also involving the businesses, the supermarkets, the hoteliers who purchase the products. Because at the end of the day, most businesses run on an overdraft or some sort of financing mechanism. So how do you give them incentives through that mechanism? How does the bank? So you regulate those things, but you also need to monitor. We need to have records, Gregory, so that we can able to see what is happening. This is very important. This must not be a helter-skelter business. The farms must be registered. So again, you need that regulation. And from the parliamentary standpoint, from that legislative standpoint, we also have to legislate the whole issue of what happens in terms of protection. This is very important. We're speaking about not just the product and the activity, but how do we also protect the environment by the activities that we do? So, for example, we had the water resource bill recently, yes, farmers have to pay, etc. That's a different debate. But how does all of this thing, pollution, all of those other factors are very important in reducing that, because we have to look at beyond the farmer, because other persons in the community, in the businesses, the homeowners, are also doing things that jeopardizing the environment that the farmer has to respond to. And then the poor farmer trying to respond because water coming down from somebody's house and nobody's going to help him. And so he has to take action and he cannot get money to fix his. So these persons must be held accountable in the process. So we need to look and see who are those that are going to be affecting the activities of the farmers and so on.
Fair enough. Sinclair, I want to move on. I think I'll come back to you on another front, but I want to move on to Marion and some of the other panelists so we could get their views. So, Marion, as we know, on the ground implementation of these types of projects, you do come across many challenges in terms of implementing those projects. Now, I know G-Cruise is doing important work to strengthen climate resilience in Grenada's water and agricultural sector. What have been some of the key challenges in executing the agricultural component of that project, particularly in reaching and engaging smallholder farmers, and how have those challenges affected the uptake of the climate resilience support technologies that you're trying to bring to them?
Thank you. Thank you. I think there's a lot food for thought here that I would love to comment on. And I do agree. I think when the climate resilient water sector in Grenada project was born, and that came out of consultation with farmers, with representatives from the ministry, our partner in the Grenada Development Bank, and we had a consultant also doing a lot of the groundwork in conceptualizing a project proposal that would also satisfy the high standards of a Green Climate Fund project proposal. And that's where it comes. When you're dealing with outside international money, there's a certain standard and a certain impact you have to measure. It's a climate project, so you have to tick all these boxes, and that makes it often very, very complicated. So in terms of the need for drip irrigation, micro sprinklers, shade houses, rainwater harvesting systems, and also to a certain extent hydroponics, in the agricultural sector, there's a huge demand in Grenada from farmers who willingly want to adopt this and see a need to get access to these technologies. And these projects, like the Agri-Food project, can support in getting access to that. And we thought we had a really robust approach. So the farmers would go, they pick the equipment, they think, well, in a certain standard, of course, there is certain guidelines. They pick the equipment, they purchase it, they get 3 quotes, and they ask the money back from the Grenada Development Bank. Sounds simple, right? So it's not that simple. So I think we're still in the middle of the painful process, but we found, and it was a very long dialogue, that one thing that I would do differently now is looking, okay, what is the suppliers? Because you want local suppliers on the ground who can also maintain and service and have spare parts, right? But we have, in a small island complex, very limited amount of suppliers who actually sell that equipment and a certain standard of the equipment and have access to that, because also manufacturers, they don't go to markets where you have a few thousand customers, right? They go to big markets. So if you want a new technology, then you need to convince the manufacturers to bring it in, or you need to maybe have a collaboration across the CARICOM or OCS region or with other countries. So access to the equipment. So when we looked at the Challenge Fund for Agriculture, we then said, okay, bulk procurement, because also economy of scale matters and this brings the price down. So we changed the approach of bringing the equipment in as a big tender. And then you have the next problem, because these tender process may be a governmental tender process, may be a guideline that's adopted from the Caribbean Development Bank, it may be from an agency like GIZ who's complying with EU regulations and so on. You do a public tender, and the local suppliers are not used to these tenders. So again, you need to go in and you do some what we call capacity building, or you need to have someone who understands the language, and I see Trevor there, who understands the language and helps to fill out the paperwork. So it's all of that needs to get you there. And what do you do after when you have a project like that? How you can actually sustain it. So there's a lot of bureaucratic challenges and access to technology that makes it very complicated for a farmer to get state-of-the-art water-saving equipment in the agricultural sector.
Now, we'll come back to that, because I think initially in PS's remarks, you did mention of all of these. You see projects, you hear millions, you hear billions, you hear this. But when the farmer is finding the access to those things so difficult, it does create a certain amount of disillusionment along there in the sector. So we'll come back to that question again, but I want to move on to Natasha. Now, Natasha, they say perception is reality. Yes. And out there in the farming community, in the agricultural space, you hear that this agricultural sector is not a sector that is attractive for investors, not attractive for financiers like yourselves and the other financial players in the sector. So, knowing that agriculture has historically been viewed as high risk by many financial institutions, how is the GDB working to shift that perception and tailor its financial products to support investments in climate-resilient technologies for smallholder farmers? And not just climate-resilient technologies, but financing for agriculture.
Investment overall.
Investment overall.
Yeah. You mentioned it in your introduction. Unfortunately, the perception is the reality. Agriculture is a high-risk sector when you're looking at financial investment. I can even say that for most financial institutions, if you look at their portfolio, agriculture might be one of the lowest performing portfolios in terms of delinquency rates. There are a few things that we have realized over time, and you also have to bear in mind, for a financial institution, when you're assessing a project, not just agriculture, but any project, the intention of the financing, and one of the biggest questions that we ask ourselves is, how sustainable is this project/business after the implementation of the financing? Yeah? Remember, when you're talking loan financing, you're talking about an extended term. And I see Mr. Boland here from St. Lucia Development Bank prior. So when you're assessing projects, you look at the bankability, of course, but you also look at the viability and the sustainability of the project. And in many instances, unfortunately, that's where the biggest, I would say, hurdle comes when you're assessing and attempting to finance agriculture. How do we make these projects and initiatives sustainable after the implementation period, after the 6 months of the poultry farm, and it's now operating, how do we make this sustainable? We mentioned access and interest. I don't think there's an issue with availability of finance. I believe there's an issue with access. We have loan products for agriculture that have interest rates as low as 1%. Yet still we were challenged, yeah? And some of the issues that we have looked at and we continue to look at, we just concluded an annual review of our loan products that we make available. And so every year we have this activity internally where we reassess what's available, make recommendations to the board of directors as to how we change and all of that. So these are some of the initiatives that we do. We also internally, outside of any other organization, look at what we can do to support farmers. So we provide training, we source as well technical assistance. We had a training program last week for small business owners in all sectors. And it's one of the challenges that we have, and I must say, unfortunately, none of the farmers showed up. We had the fishers, we had the agro-processors, we had most of them, even after giving commitments. You know, so those are some of the things that we see, and these are some of the tendencies that create unsustainable projects in the long run. Yeah. Okay. So it's not just on the financial institution. There has to be a greater level of collaboration and partnership among all stakeholders to address this. I'm speaking for the GDB, but I'm sure this might apply to most financial institutions, including credit unions, commercial banks. The money is there. The money is there. How do we find projects that we can finance, that we can say, yes, with reasonable risk, because risk is not something you can completely remove, but how can we say in the next 5 years, while there's still a loan on the books, that this project is generating cash flow to pay that loan? Yeah? So that's a kind of bigger picture that we look at. So we provide training, we collaborate with other stakeholders to provide capacity building. We even go on to farms to try to assist them with their bookkeeping and record keeping and all of these things. So as an institution, we're doing, I'm not saying that we're doing all that is necessary, but this is a wider conversation that includes all stakeholders. Yeah. It's not them and us. It's not the farmers and the institutions against each other. Exactly. I think we all have the same goal, but how do we come together to make it happen, and to make it happen effectively to the point where that these projects are sustainable beyond their natural implementation life cycle? Yeah, and I'll stop there for now.
Nah, thanks, Natasha. And I'm gonna make a jump over Steve and Martin for a little bit and try and bring in our panelists in the virtual space. Because Natasha, in a lot of her deliberation, raised a word came over and over, and that word is risk. And one of the things the government ministry has been trying to do is how do we reduce that risk in the sector. So, Mr. Belfield, I hope you could hear me.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So, insurance has become or is a powerful tool in reducing risk in agriculture. But innovation, or more innovation, is needed to ensure that it works not just for the bigger entities, but for the smallholder farmers in our region. And most of our entrepreneurs in the agricultural space are small enterprises, right? So my question to you is, how can innovative insurance products such as parametric or index insurance, or a combination of the two, help de-risk the sector and make it more attractive to both farmers and financiers?
All right, thank you very much, and a pleasant good afternoon to everyone, esteemed moderator, fellow panelists, special invitees, organizers, stakeholders, partners, and friends. This essentially is a tale of two islands, one Caribbean story. when on September 28, 2017, Hurricane Maria made landfall in Dominica with 160 miles winds per hour. In 6 hours, we lost 226% of our GDP. Crops gone, livelihoods crushed, schools, homes, and even hopes were blown away. In fact, when we fast forward to July 1, 2024, when Hurricane Beryl hit Grenada, where it became the earliest Category 5 storm ever recorded in the Atlantic, who would have ever thought that you would have had a system as early as July? In the wake of it, we saw about 98% of Grenada agriculture infrastructure destroyed, homes, critical infrastructure damaged. And we see one of the symbols of Grenada's island economy, which is the nutmeg trees, also laid broken in the soil. For us, this is not an anomaly anymore. This is the new normal. And while we can't stop the storm, we can change how we recover from them. And that's why we developed the Flexible Hurricane Protection Program, where you don't have adjusters, or sometimes how we fondly refer to them as reducers. There are no delays. It is simply based on scientific triggers, and the payouts are done within days. And this solution for us represents a paradigm shift in how we approach agriculture risk, from compensation to resilience, and thereby helping to de-risk the agricultural sector and make it more attractive to both farmers and financiers. You asked the question, how? Well, earlier we had the PS spoke about scale and speed. And then Ms. Joseph spoke about availability and access. Fundamental terms, very simple. And so for us, there are 4 immediate things that come to mind. Well, the first thing we look at, de-risking for the farmers. And this is from the farmer's perspective. The traditional insurance model would rely on damage assessments that are often delayed, subjective, and in some cases even bureaucratic. In fact, you have to wait days before they can come to your farm to make the adjustment, only to realize that you've been underinsured. In the contrast, parametric insurance offered pre-agreed payouts. So even before the event or the payout event happens, you already know how much your payout will be before the storm even happens. And that event can be led by an indicator, let's say the level of rainfall, wind speed, or drought duration. So in the case of our parametric insurance, we provided disbursement within 14 days. Again, you remember we talked about scale and speed, and then we talked about availability and access. So for us, our parametric insurance is really based on wind speed thresholds. So once we receive the reading, the users, those who sign up for the program, would already know if it falls within that cycle, and they would be able to be paid, and as a result, be able to have the liquidity to replant, rebuild, and restart. Next thing we want to look about, and we had one of my esteemed panelists spoke about it when she spoke about the availability and access, de-risking to financiers. And this is a critical point, something that sometimes is hardly understood. And for us, we recognize that financial institutions, for example, like credit unions and microfinance institutions, are reluctant to lend to smallholder farmers due to the high exposure. It is considered a high risk endeavor. And so that is why parametric insurance comes in, to mitigate that default risk, so that we ensure that those borrowers are likely to recover quickly and continue low payments. Remember, it's not about being impacted. It is about bouncing back quicker or bouncing back better. And according to the World Bank, we see farmers with access to agriculture insurance are 40% more likely to access credit, and 25% of them are more likely to invest in productivity enhancing technology. So there is the impetus for us to not only de-risk the farmers, but also de-risk the financiers. And the third point comes in on transparency and predictability. In parametric insurance, and particularly with the FHP, by tying payouts to measurable index, it provides a greater clarity and certainty to all stakeholders. So there's no guessing here. There's no guess game on what is going to happen. You know before the event, because once the trigger event is activated, you know what your payments are going to be, how much they're going to be. And we've gone so much to say, within what time will those payments be made? And then lastly, lowering of admin costs. I'm hoping I'm within my 4 minutes, but you can go ahead.
You're almost you're
almost
over it.
Okay, good. So lastly is lowering admin costs. And so for us, because we've digitalized the entire process, what it does is reduces the overhead and associated risk. And as a result, it makes it easier for, as my PS said, to scale and provide access. So in short, our insurance product, FHP, isn't just a product. It's a financial instrument that unlocks confidence, capital, and climate smart growth. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Phoenix. Thanks for that.
So there are something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Another big point that farmers make all the time is additional perils, because all we keep hearing is that wind peril, but there's this water peril that is affecting a lot of our farmers as well. But we're running out of time, and I got to move along to two important gentlemen. So I'm going to skip you, Martin. I'm going to go to Steve, and I'm going to come back to you. So, can I say Steve, Mr. Maxime? Anyone is good? Okay. Steve, you keep getting lost in the shuffle, you know. I know.
Do you want me to ask myself a question?
Steve, I think you keep getting lost in the shuffle.
So
My question to you, though.
let me volunteer.
No. The first thing I want to ask you, though, is you have developed this CSAC model in terms of financing work in the agricultural space. Could you give us a quick synopsis of what does that do and how the reason for its effectiveness?
Okay, so this is something that has been developed by the latest intergovernmental organization on a global scale. This is a Partnership Initiative for Sustainable Land Management. We have adopted there's something called a Climate Smart Agriculture Compliant Tool and Protocol. What that does is it provides a mechanism for agriculture to be recognized within the NDCs. The nationally determined contributions, the bugbear stopping agriculture from being included, often had to do with MRV, with measurement, reporting, and verification. What this CSAC tool does, it provides a mechanism wherein you can measure, report, and verify your mitigative and adaptive components. And the other part of it is that what Roderick was mentioning, we now have a brand, a label, a mechanism to show that the product has been developed in a climate smart way, in a measurably climate smart way. And that is where the climate premium comes in. So farmers adopting the CSAC methodology, and this is something that has been tested and researched across the Caribbean. We actually have countries that have adopted it as their de facto climate smart agriculture mechanism. You now have a climate premium similar to the social premium that was in vogue when fair trade was in style.
Yeah.
In the sense that we now have a mechanism to have a top-up. This is the major difference between this CSAC and GAP and even organic, uncertified organic, in that we now have a mechanism to provide the farmers with an incentive, a financial incentive at the end, which is not going to be funded by the consumers as yet, not going to be funded by the buyers, the produce buyers, but it's going to come from the climate justice and just transition funds that we have been able to negotiate. Because no discussion on NDCs, on nationally determined contributions, should be divorced from climate justice and just transition issues. So we are saying we have found a mechanism, proven mechanism now, to reward farmers for adopting some of these things. As our Dominican counterpart would have mentioned, there are 11, and this I have got it straight from the horse's mouth, there are 11 certified GAP farmers in Dominica. When they bring their produce to the market and set it down, as Roderick was saying, when they set it down alongside produce coming from non-GAP certified farmers, they get the same price. What we are saying is that the only way you can incentivize an adaptation and have people adopt it is if there is a financial incentive at the end. And this is what the climate premium does, so that what I wanted to share with the audience is that I bring tidings of great news. And although that may sound Christmassy,
Yeah.
but given climate change, we're not really sure what season we're in right now anyhow. So we could just as well be in the Christmas season. We heard the mistress of ceremonies talking about the mango season and
Yeah.
sapote season. But agriculture is not a perpetual go-over season sometimes. So that we have a mechanism now to do just that. Thanks.
No, thanks for that, Steve. And we quickly running out of time, so I gotta go to Martin. Martin, achieving scale in climate investment calls for a harmonized approach across the sectors. No? So given the growing emphasis on integrated cross-sectoral approaches to resilience, how can your ministry, the ministry that you are more closely aligned with, how can that ministry help to better align national climate policies, donor priorities, and financial mechanisms to support a more coordinated and scalable investment ecosystem for agriculture? So how can we work together to better invest in the sector?
Okay, thank you. And the Ministry of Climate Resilience, the Environment and Renewable Energy is responsible for the oversight mechanisms, the setting up of the policy, legislation, and other strategies to deal with resilience and the implementation of mitigation and adaptation action. Now, as a lot of the panel have said, and we heard this morning, is how do we convert those policies into action? And that is some of this stickling block. Now, there is a National Climate Change Committee, which is the structure that is set up. So within the National Climate Change Committee, there should be a focal point from every ministry, including agriculture as well. And some of the emphasis is how do you, well, the plan is to mainstream, or we're working on mainstreaming climate change in every ministry. So issues, projects should come from the ministry to the Climate Change Committee, to what you call the National Designated Authority that is within the ministry as well, and then into project pipeline to the donors, and the other way around. When funding come, it should trickle down that way. Now, we could look at what has been working and how we could scale up those efforts as well. Now, we had the G-Cruise project, which set up a fund within the bank, a challenge fund. So that was opportunities there for farmers and other small business holders to take advantage of. Also under the Enhanced Direct Access project, which is a $20 million project, you had what you call a revolving loan scheme that was also set up within the development bank with highly concessionary climate loans, which help with de-risking as well. I think it was 1% to 2%. Now, how do we scale that up? So these financial mechanisms are existing, and what we need to do, as a nation, and is how do we, again, plug in funding into that and then go out and get, so we could, continue to provide funding to small-scale farmers and the agri sector. Now, there is not a shortage of policies and plan. We have the National Adaptation Plan, and there is 14 program of actions there, and I think 3 or 4 is high in food security. In fact, there is one in food security with, I think, a cap of $500 million to build adaptation in food security between 2025 and 2030. And a lot of what our senator is talking about, how do you have a lot of data, agri-med data, how do you do training, how you centralize training, how do you do demonstration plots, how do you climate smart approaches, all of those is built within the system. But I also want to say too, with all of this mechanism that is set up, there is also the challenge of getting the small business holders and farmers, fishers up to speed with the requirements of this climate finance. Because finance is not easy, finance is hard. We heard that, the small business or the fishers, they're not registered, they're not insured. A lot of times the proposal, they need a lot of assistance in developing proposal as well. training. So a lot of emphasis have to go on, building that capacity at that level, and also the awareness, of what is happening too. Because oftentimes there is a lot of initiative happening, but the farmers and fishers don't know because it's not coming across in the language and it's not in the medium which you listen to. So I think, it's how do we put those plans in action on steroids in order to, build resilience in the system.
Okay. So, folks, I was informed that I'm the stumbling block between people and lunch, and they say you never want to be in between those two groups. So, some of the questions I'll have to leave. There's a lot more that we have to discuss, but I want to give each of you 1 minute, and no more than that. And I will start with Mr. Belfield in the virtual space to just give us a synopsis, some quick ideas as to how we could bridge that gap, finance in the agricultural sector. So, Mr. Belfield, you could go ahead first. 1 minute.
Thank you very much. And fascinating discussion so far. We've spoke about technology. We've heard from the PS about the importance of financial inclusion and access. You actually being able to be in the space to benefit from the financial mechanisms, but are you really able to access this? Those are critical drivers, critical points for us to consider. The other thing that's mentioned, and I saw somebody put in the chat about technology, how are we investing in startups? What is our level of risk tolerance as it relates to untried technology and technology partners and developments? So we need to look at it from a holistic point of view. 1, about mitigation. 2, about readiness. 3, about resilience. But we also need to be futuristic in our mindset and think about how do we get ahead of the curve. And that's why, for example, for us at FHP, it's not just about another insurance product. It's how do we think futuristically? How do we help them? Because the name of the game is pace, it is speed. It is often said that at the time of a disaster, in the first 24 hours, the most important thing is not even communication, it's life and food. And once the persons can eat and survive, then we can rebuild after. But how do we rebuild after? Do we rebuild just as it was, or do we rebuild resiliently? And so that is why it is important in bridging that gap. We need to take all of these factors into consideration. But remember, the name of the game is speed and pace, but also access and accessibility. Thank you.
Thanks, Phoenix. I will go with the ladies next. Natasha, same question to you.
Yeah, just in wrapping up, a couple of things come to mind. Senator Sinclair mentioned the fact that we need to look at the value chain. And one of the critical things for me is that the value chain literally forms the nexus between demand and supply. And so as financial institutions, we look for partnerships with all stakeholders, government, etc. How do we create the enabling environment that builds a capacity that we're looking for in the farmers in order to help them be able to access the products and services that we offer? So things like incubators, model farms, all those type of elements. How do we look at planning cycles? Who is managing the value chain? These are discussions that we need to have outside of this in order to be able to come up with a reasonable approach that provides a greater access for our agri-business owners as we move forward.
Okay,
thanks.
Thank you. Marianne?
Okay, let me try to. I think simplify, make process and access to finance simplified. Don't make it complicated, and make sure that you know your supply channels. I think that's critical for every farmer to get access to those technologies and strengthen and work with the suppliers, the shops that provide the equipment and enabling them also getting the access to this equipment.
Thank Claire, you dominated the time earlier on, so you gotta go and go fast.
Yeah, you see, every time we come to agriculture, we always don't have enough time. But what I'm hearing here, Gregory and colleagues, I listen to my good friend Martin speak about how much projects and how much money, and I was like, Is this real? Is this happening? Who is implementing it? Who is getting it to the farmers? Who is getting it to the agro-processors? So my question is, how much money is there? How much persons are there on the ground? You know, look at, we have a police force, 800-900 persons, and every day they keep adding to implement the laws and regulation because they want to make sure things happen. So if we have all of these resources available, who are the people? Is it Natasha only in GDP? Does she have 500 other persons to get out to our 10,000 farmers? So if we look at it for real, if we don't have enough persons to get out there, then we'd end up like the bus terminal on a Friday evening, person just waiting for a bus to go home. And this is what the situation is. Our farmers are there waiting for things to happen because the information, and we say they're on WhatsApp and all of those things. No, we need to go out there. If we're really serious about this thing, you know, it's intentional, purposeful. We have to go out. When Digicel and Flow want to sell the top up and the chip, they're all in the back of Shantimel and Beauregard and all kind of places. They're there because they want to make money and they are top class companies. We can't sit down in the office with 5 persons and want to reach 10,000 persons. So all the good news we hear today with Steve, my friend, and all of this, and Martin, and Natasha. How are we getting to these people? WhatsApp? Cell phone? No. If you listen to the government, say boots on the ground. Where are your boots? We have to hire people, whether it's retired persons, whether it's young persons who can relate, so that the confidence, you know, you go to the farm and you chat to the farmers and the confidence improve. You talk to them on the phone and it's like, that girl long there here in the office there, you know, they don't have time for that. They say, come and see. So my advice in all of this, Gregory, is simple. If we need to hire and get persons on part-time basis, as the case may be, and get out on the ground, you know, and get that confidence, get one person connecting to 10 persons or 20 persons, and they become like the sub-agents. Look at, if you go back and see how insurance companies used to operate before. You have insurance salesmen because they want to make money, and they have persons going out there and selling the policies. But we do have a lot of millions of dollars, much more than we had before. And we do have persons, I mean, we can't be real. This to me is a hearing, I'm hearing here that there are opportunities, but we're not getting to the people. The value chain approach, yes, but we need to get to the people. So let's hire the people in different mechanisms of hiring them. If GIZ don't hire anybody, and she mentioned it, Marianne, the project could be in problems. And of course, the last part, we need to have more of the monies getting to the farmers, the fisher folks, a greater percentage. So the project finish, half of the money gone back to the donors because procurement and all of those things. But the consultants and all of them, they were never lit. There was never procurement issues because they got paid up to the end to say, well, we cannot pay nobody else. And the farmers keep getting shortchanged every time. We need to look at that. And then the government is then being called on to save their face, to kind of backstop and say, well, we go take out some of the concept. When we had that money, we didn't use it. It was drawn down, interest is being accrued on it, and it become part of the public debt. To me, we have to do better than that. And that is my closing comments regarding this whole matter.
All right. Martin Sinclair said he was in school with you, and then he threw a lot of things at you. So I'll let you go.
Yeah, I must say that, you know, I do agree with my friend Senator as well. And, you know, the question is to whether, you know, the way we are set up as a government, as a ministerial system, is best to address resilience as well, and whether we need to relook that, whether we have the right ministry or there should be new ministry, you know, climate disaster and resilient fund ministry. Because, yes, people need to know, and it needs to be easy for people to access. Because what is happening really, people are funding their resilience. You know, they didn't cause it, but they are funding their resilience, and they really shouldn't have to be doing that. And there should be a lot more safety nets, a lot more available, funding and opportunities for people to buffer, climate impacts.
Okay. Steve, the best for last, I know about, but you'll.
In less than 1 minute,
Yeah.
we have the boots on the ground. Keep following what we are attempting to do. There are 8 project countries involved right now. Phase 2 is going to involve 17 countries within CARICOM. I can assure you, go to the PISLM website or my own YouTube channel and you will see all of these details.
Okay. So folks, I think we're right on lunch, but I'll just give 2 persons in the audience if they have anything burning to ask that they could ask. So 2 questions. Yeah. Want to borrow a mic? The guy coming.
Thank you. Thank you, panel. I think it was an excellent sort of discussion. Two quick areas that I sort of was concerned about for Natasha and her group. We saw in St. Lucia where the farmers, in an effort to sort of reduce the import bill, were offered contracts to supply particular fruits, vegetables in certain areas, primarily for the hotels. But they were given contracts by the ministries. And those contracts allowed financiers now to be able to say, I see a cash flow. I can see beyond the donation or the early stages. Has that been considered by you all in any way? And then secondly, I haven't heard any sort of mention about involving the youth. How are you taking steps to encourage the young people to say, I want to be involved, and make it sexy for them to say, yes, I can see the ability to earn a living. We know that traditionally the farmer was looked at as somebody with his boots and mud and all sorts of things, but there are now improved technologies that allow people to have farms in greenhouses and in containers and different things like that. So if there's any way that you can expand on that for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll take the first one. The second one, I'll allow one of the other panelists. As it relates to contracts, we have used contracts literally as assignments, more or less, for guarantees for funding and cash flows. Those aren't widespread in terms of use, because one of the things that we've realized is that many entities locally do not give contracts to farmers for the supply of produce. Where those exist, however, we have used them to the full extent as they have existed, and those have more or less been used to guarantee payments. So it is an option that's available, not only in the agriculture sector, but we use it as well for even government contractors for infrastructure works and all of that. So it is an option that's available for funding and as a guarantee for cash flows, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody want to take on the youth question?
Yeah,
It's a question I had as
just
well.
would say that in terms of youth integration into climate change, efforts is being made at the ministry level to ensure that within the national policies and strategies now, there is integration of youth and genders consideration, but at a policy level.
Anybody else? Raquel? Good. Mike, here you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just had a gap and an opportunity that we can probably work on as it relates to, showing the retailers or the markets the positive in having contracts with farmers, and also showing the farmers the opportunities that exist in contracts. One question that I have for Ms. Natasha and Mr. Maxime: do you believe that the persons in our financial institutions are well-trained to deal with farmers, that they understand the market, they understand the nitty-gritties, the pros and the cons of farming, they understand the periods in which, the profits will come in, the periods in which the farmer may have a loss, have we done enough building of capacity within the financial institution? Because I believe that's a gap that we need to fix. In Guyana, I would have met with some people from Suriname Trust. I'm not sure if they're here with us today, but they have a good model, and they like to work with farmers. I mean, and we have models within the region that, you know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can speak with them. We can see what their models are. We can try to implement it here in Grenada. But I personally feel as if our financial institutions, the persons are not well equipped or well knowledgeable to deal with the farmers.
Go ahead.
I would agree with you that is a gap. It's one of the gaps that we have at GDB addressed, continually addressing because things are changing, building the capacity of our team, particularly as it relates to the assessment of agriculture and fisheries projects, because those have unique cycles. So we even have models for different types of crops and how those grow and when they're ready for harvest and what percentages over time. So those are used in our assessment. There's always need for building internal capacity. And I wouldn't say that we're there. I don't think that we're at that stage where I can say it's not necessary, but it's something that we continue to do and iterate as we look at projects, as different types of projects come up, because some subsectors within agriculture are very different. When you look at poultry, for instance, you know, so there are different variations within the sectors, and we have been attempting to address that. We can have a bilateral. Let's see how we can look at some of your information and your knowledge and how we can continue to plug those gaps. Yeah?
So thank you for the question. I've been lucky enough to work in the largest agricultural development bank in the region, in all three actually, ACB, Guy Bank, and what was then the Agricultural Development Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, where we operated as a development bank and we had supervised credit. And those two words close the case. You can't have supervised credit if the person supervising doesn't understand the sector. So in my time, we were all agriculture graduates as loans officers. You started in the bank as a loans officer, and as a loans officer, you had to have an agriculture degree or an agriculture diploma. So that negates the whole question about not knowing enough. And I think that there ended the discussion. You must have knowledgeable loans officers if you're going to do supervised credit, which is the only type of credit that works in the agricultural sector. It has to be supervised credit.
Yeah, I think we need to...
And you can't outsource it. You can't outsource it. The ratio of extension officers to farmers in Trinidad when I was working there was like 1 to 1,500. I can't expect my loan to be supervised by somebody who has 1,499 other clients to see about. So it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Because for me, agriculture is a very lucrative business. And for some reason, some people cannot see that. You must eat. We must process. And so I think we need to start with building capacity with the people in the financial institutions and teaching farmers that farming is a business. And they could make a lot of money with farming. All right, thank you.
Okay. This gentleman had a question. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning, panel and everyone else. My name is Avinash. I'm the General Manager for Republic Bank Grenada Corporate. I also have a foot in Trinidad, and based on from your last comment. Right.
I know what Republic Bank is doing with Marcus and so,
Right. So right now we have, we're on a project. We have invested $100 million US across the CARICOM to augment agriculture and agriculture products throughout the region. And this discussion is very fitting to see that we want to find a solution and take more risk in the space and how to mitigate that risk. And I'm looking at the some of the comments, and there is scope to grow. There is scope to put value into the people of the Caribbean regions. However, one of the biggest things that we need to look at is the education part of it. Right? When we looked at the loan portfolio that we're giving in Trinidad, most of the loans that we're giving, yes, they're accessing the loans, it's unsecured, it's risk that we're willing to take. But the farmers are, they take the loans, they start up, but seeing the end-to-end process from digging the soil, as you said, they're getting the food, they're getting the product on the customer's table, there is a gap because of the big risk factor, right? So more is needed to be done in terms of education, in terms of our farmers, the smart. But it's new to me that I'm hearing climate smart financing as I'm in Grenada now, and it's fantastic. I wish we could put that into Trinidad.
Well, but sorry to cut across you, but Miatid, Marcus Maiku and Miatid, they're in the midst of conversations with Republic Bank Grenada concerning that very same thing. So that we've done a lot of work in Trinidad through Miatid as the consulting arm of MAFAS.
So we have not started in Grenada as yet in terms of giving all those sort of loans.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to see that it will soon be here before the end of 2025 that we will be taking that risk in Grenada for the farmers in Grenada. Yeah. Thank you all so much.
Sure. Thank you. So, Gregory.
Two more, and then we got one more.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank the panel for the discussion, very insightful. I just want to know, implementing climate smart agriculture, does that increase the cost of production compared to the price that the farmer is going to get at the end of the day? Because in the economy of scale, there's always seems to be a glut within probably, the first week the harvest starts to come out. So how does that tie in with the farmer being to maintain? We talked about the tools earlier. Then how can the farmer maintain, the instruments and the tools that he received in that regard, and whether a study has been done? So as part of the financing process, all of that is taken into consideration. Thank you very much.
But the long and short of it is yes. Yeah. It has been done, it has been worked out. I mean, this is a conversation we can have separately, but in terms of there's always a cost of learning, regardless of the technology. And what we are trying to do is to overcome that cost of learning by having this climate premium that I tried to explain, and that is easily found on YouTube or on the web. But we can have that conversation over lunch. Lunch, Gregory?
I know. Yeah. This is it. That's the last question. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so I'll be very brief. My name is Graham Eban, insurance broker. From time to time, I often hear farmers asking about crop insurance, right? Today, I'm hearing about the parametric insurance, right? I think, as was said, farmers need to be aware, right, as to what is available, the perils, the triggers for these funds that are available. So I'd love to see someone take the initiative, to deal with that in the future, just to be brief.
Phoenix, you want to give that a quick go? Phoenix?
But parametric insurance, as practiced by CCRAF, it's available. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. And we actually, in 2024, we had a session with a lot of the nutmeg farmers, in fact, with cooperatives. We were all the way up in Grenville area. We went to a couple of the annual general meetings there, and we did a lot of sensitization. In fact, I think over 300 farmers attended those on-site awareness sessions, and that was a collaboration between us and the Ministry of Agriculture. So there is a lot of sensitization out there. I do agree that more can be done, and particularly for us, and thanks to our partnership with the government, the ministries of the government, the regulator. I must bring out some plugs for the regulator, very forward thinking. And so with a partnership with the government, our stakeholders, the credit unions, our cooperatives, we were able to, and in fact, from our visit, I think about 3 or 4 weeks after then Hurricane Beryl hit Grenada. So it was very timely. So and I agree that much more can be done, and we're hoping between now and the close-off period in July that we're able to do much more sensitization. For those of you who are listening and you're on the WOVA app, we have a link-up session that is going to be happening after the conference. We'll be happy you'll be able to speak with myself and my general manager, and we'll be able to tell you much more about FHP and how this is going to change how climate insurance and parametric insurance at a micro level, the granular level, because there are also CRIF that happens at a national level, which somebody mentioned earlier. And you're going to learn a little bit more about how that. So if you want to find out more information about the FHP before this conference is over, just send me on the WOVA app. My name is Phoenix. Just send me a message. We'll connect. I'll send you the link, and we'll be able to have much more discussion on it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Phoenix. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this very informative panel discussion. A lot was learned, a lot was shared, but there is need for further dialogue, further discussion on this very topical issue. So before I close, I just want to, first of all, thank the OECS Secretariat, thank Mr. Crispin Dovern, Rochelle Alsey, Shanna, and the other folks who worked closely with us to get this panel discussion organized. I want to say a special thank you to our distinguished panelists who came out and shared their knowledge and experience and expertise. Thank very much P.S. Bagwan, who stayed with us throughout the conversation. Thank you very much for your time. Thank my colleagues at the ICA Eastern Caribbean office, especially our boss, Mr. Greg Rollins, Miss Nikelia Gregoire Caray, I want to especially mention her, and Mr. Brent Theophile, who worked closely with me in having this thing organized. And before I close, I want to give a plug for our CCRAF platform. We're celebrating 10 years this year. A gentleman spoke on the whole issue of education. And one of the things that we need to do is share more climate knowledge, more information. You know, that is going to be critical, because it's one thing to have money, but where is that information, how to access it, how is the best way to access it, who are the people you reach out to, what knowledge you need. So I want to make a plug for that. We are always available to share our expertise using the CCRAF platform. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and your patience. I was told that lunch will be served at the Trade Winds restaurant, and people should be back here by 2 or 5 p.m. So it's gonna be, you're gonna bite and swallow. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So,